also research that says that if you help children as young as 6 and 7 years old by telling them about the research or telling them how their brain works or how their brain operates and what are the things that help them to study better, to apply their mind better and things like that, there is research to show that children are in a position to change their behavior, make wiser choices, and really teachers can install good behavior in children. And it, to me, I feel like there is a way for us to get to parents through children as well.
There'll be kind of a more focus on grooming the parent for this journey.
Yes.
And keeping a grip on what the gap is there. I think it's always looking at the Indian family system where parents and grandparents play a crucial role. I think without taking them into confidence, without making them part of this journey, schools are in a position to fail the expectation.
But how can you take away life skills from this situation? So we developed a process that gets children, right from the time, the way the question paper is designed, the way the answer sheet is designed, there is a lot of agency in children. Children start, studying the question paper, studying the answer. They start, the teachers only give marks for the whole paper, but then children start doing the data entry. Children start doing the analysis. Children start looking at the marks per question. When schools and parents realize or change their attitude or mindset, and they say, okay, these are not children, these are growing men and growing women.
Yes.
I think then there could be a change.
That's a perspective that we have to put, because parents are just asking students to study more, spend some time more on studying, but they actually don't know what they are studying and what is in there. So I think, again, the phonics part, which is very interesting.
But that is such an example from Indian history about equity versus equality. As a parent, if you feel that both your kids or all your kids need to receive the same education, and we need to find what's best for our children, because the needs of children will also keep changing as they grow and as they develop and as they mature over time. As parents, we just need to be responsive to that.
I think that's one area that I would love to listen from you. I think effective parenting should be part of the core curriculum. Hello, good evening, Willie.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
So we have started this conversation with people who are in education and whom I personally value. And I've, over the journey of last 10 years, I found that there's a lot of transformations happening in Indian education. And then you are one of those persons, I think, has become a catalyst who's actually jumping at these changes and absorbing those changes and implementing in schools. I'm so happy to have you here today, and I look forward to working with you more. Just few thoughts on your background, on how you scaled micro school to a big school that you have today with so many students and different branches. Just a brief comment on your journey in the last 20 years or so.
So this is about the personal story, especially my mother and my father. They started a preschool, and this was back in the days in the 1990s, where anybody who probably came from Kerala or from Goa was a lady at home who would speak English really well, who was a good teacher. I think many of the people in the society would just send their kids to to somebody like that, and then expect that person to teach their children. That's basically how nursery schools started, I think, in the country, and especially in the city of Mumbai.
Yeah.
And that was also because back then there used to be interviews for first standard, and parents would get very nervous. They would want to make sure that their kids are able to pass these interviews for school admissions.
Entrance coaching.
Entrance coaching, exactly, right? And so they would send their kids to a small nursery school where somebody would train them the basic rhymes and the letters and the numbers and things like that, because formal school assumed that kids come preloaded with all this software.
Yes.
But that's how my mom...
Bring your own device.
Bring your own device. So that's how my mom started a nursery school.
Okay.
And it remained a nursery school for more than 15 years.
Yeah.
And I knew it was my dad's dream to start a school, but he passed away before he could do that. But he did sow the seed, and my mom and I then got inspired to, follow his dream. I think he's doing a lot more now that he's up there than he was here with us, and now our schools are the schools that my mom started and I run. We have about 5 schools right now, and more than 4,000 children. It's been 20 years, and we're very happy with the way we've been able to contribute to the development of these children. But I like the way you said that the schools earlier were micro schools. And I think that's true, because I don't think micro schools per se is a new concept.
Yeah.
I think it's been there, and history repeats itself.
Yes.
In new ways that we just think it's totally new.
Yes.
I mean, that's a brilliant way for you to put it.
And India had a lot of micro schools, because the only skill set that the teachers, the founders had was that they were able to speak English, or they had the passion to teach.
I think I love it when you say that India is a land of micro schools, because if you really look at the Guru Shiksha.
Yes, Gurukulams.
No, yeah, Gurukulams. If you look at the Guru Shiksha Parampara, I also think in cooking there is this thing called Ustad.
Yeah.
And some, so apprenticeship.
Even the doctors, the Indian doctors, physicians, Siddha Vaidya, Ayurveda, they all had this. Even the martial arts, Kalaripayat, everywhere. If you look at the artisans, like the Vishwakarmas, so whether it is carpentry or goldsmith, blacksmith, everyone had micro schooling. So
I love the way you put it, because that puts me at ease, because then I start feeling like, hey, micro school is not an experiment. The other kind of school which we go to, that is an experiment.
This is a reinvention, or rather, we are reinventing what was there before. I mean, last 200 years we might have lost it. Now we are getting out of that factory model, and then because of the industrial revolution, we were forced to get into that factory model of education. Because of the new industrial revolution, we are getting out of that.
That's true. Because this whole focus on scale and one-to-many and reducing cost and the economies of it, I think that must be driving all of us to kind of thinking like, maybe we need a bigger model. But the way you put it, it's making me think personal fitness. You join a gym, and by day 3, there's a barrage of personal trainers who come to you and say, if you really, really want to develop muscle or achieve your goals, you need personal training, right? So personal fitness is about that. Dietitian, coaching, that's about that. Counseling is 100% micro school model, right? So I think if it looks like when people get really serious about trying to achieve something, then they look for a teacher. And I think perfect time for me to say the Chinese proverb that when a student is ready, the teacher appears.
Exactly. Think of Alexander the Great.
Tell me more.
The teacher he had was not a tuition teacher, not an app, but Aristotle.
Oh, wow.
One-on-one. And you will have Alexander the Great. Because the input that you're giving, the Aristotle who is teaching a boy, and what is the output you're expecting when Aristotle is teaching. And that too one-on-one. This is exactly what was happening with Dronacharya. The Pandavas went to his curriculum, and he was hand-holding each one of them. The kind of individualized learning plan he had for Arjuna was not used for Bhima. Even the weapons they were trained on.
Wow.
The eldest one was given training on diplomacy and all the skills that he would require to run a country as the emperor, as the king. The other, each one of them were given specific training, and how he diagnosed their capabilities, their talents, and looking at the big picture, what they are going to be in the next 20, 30 years. Grooming him to be a king, the eldest one, the younger ones on specific things to support him to run that country, to win a war.
That's beautiful. That's
5 kids in one family.
But that is such an example from Indian history about equity versus equality. As a parent, if you feel that both your kids or all your kids need to receive the same education, then then we may not be fulfilling everybody's
Yes.
dreams and everybody's needs.
You have to get out of the box.
Yeah, I think they all need to be loved equally.
Yes.
But what they
Equity is-
need is different, and we need to make sure that
It's basic human rights. And then look at Ekalavya. He did not go to the guru. He was staying far away from the Rajarya because he was not able to pay the Guru Dakshina. And he was listening carefully and he was mastering the art. And he was even able to compete with Arjuna and even fare better than Arjuna. And the other part of the story, let's not discuss that right now. But what is the moral of the story with Ekalavya? Not being part of the system and still he studied. Do you think that's online schools that we have today?
well, I think that's a beautiful example. And also, isn't Eklavya known to be one of the greatest learners?
Better than Arjuna.
Better than Arjuna, right? So there's so much, it already shows there's so much responsibility, so much agency that
Student
Eklavya took.
agency that we are discussing across
Yeah.
the globe today.
Yes. And Eklavya is like the symbol of that he was sitting outside. He knew that he was not able to get that information, but he was sitting outside. He was taking whatever he could get. And then he probably,
Excelled.
he probably got half of the information that he would have got, but then he was able to complete it, create the knowledge in his head,
He practiced all thoroughly.
and practice thoroughly, and he had strong personal reasons
Yes, yes.
for him to learn, and I think he became like the symbol of what a great learner.
Open
is.
schooling and online schooling.
Yeah, he was absolutely. So I think what you said is so true, right? He was outside the system, but he was not considered to be someone who was thrown out of the system, right? He
Not
was-
even the second grade.
yeah,
Because he was better than Arjuna,
yeah.
who's supposed to be the world's best. And then if he was better than Arjuna, I think nothing matches that comparison. So.
Yeah. So I also want to put it out there that it's probably not the system that might be faulty or correct, but I think one system may not necessarily serve the needs of everybody.
Yes.
And so we need to understand that there's no one size fits all, and we need to find what's best for our children, because the needs of children will also keep changing as they grow and as they develop and as they mature over time. As parents, we just need to be responsive to that.
I think that's one area that I would love to listen from you. I think effective parenting should be part of the core curriculum.
Absolutely. Because I think if you start thinking that only a child goes to school
Yeah.
and no one else, I don't think that's entirely true, because the whole family is involved in education.
Yes.
The whole family is involved in that experience. It's a very tactile experience.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. The whole family is going through school. I'm sure that every time a parent sits with a child trying to do their homework or help them with homework, they get massive recollections of the days when they themselves were in school.
Yeah.
It's a collective shared experience, which can be beautiful, which also means that a parent at every part of that journey could be more expressive, could be more present, could be more participative, and could also help support what the formal system is trying to do in their children. There's a lot of research also which shows that parents who take higher involvement and investment in their child's schooling and learning journey tend to have children who perform or outperform others in the same journey. So I think educating the parent has to be the core prerogative as well of schools, and not just use it at a time for admissions.
Exactly. I always believe that it has to be an integral part of our curriculum, responsibility of the school to implement that parenting curriculum side by side with the school curriculum, so that we have continuity and ease of doing business. Otherwise, 50% of our time and energy is spent on managing small little dissatisfactions because parents don't have the full picture.
Right, and which may be distractions as well moving you away from the core mission.
Teachers, school management, principal, everyone. You know it better.
Yeah. There's also research that say that if you help children as young as 6 and 7 years old by telling them about the research or telling them how their brain works or how their brain operates and what are the things that help them to study better, to apply their mind better and things like that, there is research to show that children are in a position to change their behavior, make wiser choices, and really teachers can install good behavior in children. And it, to me, I feel like there is a way for us to get to parents through children as well, right? So when children also know something that they think that their parents don't know, we've also given them an arsenal that they're able to use to get more love and more, happiness and from their parents, because they have information that they can share with their parents to impress them.
Yeah.
And that way there'll be more communication, and children will be able to prompt their parents to think differently.
There'll be kind of a more focus on grooming the parent for this journey
Yes.
and keeping a grip on what the gap is there. I think it's always looking at the Indian family system where parents and grandparents play a crucial role. I think without taking them into confidence, without making them part of this journey, schools are in a position to fail the expectation.
I totally agree. And also, like, I feel like when parents know, I think they'll come out and help the school. Otherwise, at least in pre-primary, everything looks like kids are just playing.
Yes.
They're just playing all day.
Yes.
But I think that when schools and parents realize or change their attitude or mindset, and they say, okay, these are not children, these are growing men and growing women.
Yes.
I think then there could be a change.
That's a perspective that we have to put, because parents are just asking students to study more, spend some time more on studying, but they actually don't know what they're studying and what is in there. So I think again the phonics part, which is very interesting, because when you're learning a language, and again when you have to learn a second language, we don't have that. We are not lucky enough to do our schooling and universities in our mother language. We also have to have the second language. Grasp of that language is very critical in the student's journey and the success that we have in the school. So there is a gap. There is a gap. And what is your opinion on how we should be filling that gap?
A lot of the gap can be sorted completely by the school through a strong, effective, structured curriculum. To a certain extent, parents accept, or rather expect, schools to be able to fulfill those gaps, right? Because most parents don't have the knowledge that they may need in order to help their children. And so there has to be a tremendous amount of trust between the parent and the school. And there should also be a fair amount of transparency and a fair amount of submission that parents have. So choose your school wisely, but once you've chosen the school, then I think it's important to give the school, extend cooperation and creative freedom, because that is something that we need to understand, that the school is trying to do, their heart is in the right place, they're trying to do something to make sure that their children are able to grow and develop the competencies that they need to succeed in the future. And also, the parents should be aware that research is coming out every day, right? So it's not about knowing and not knowing. It's about keeping yourself updated with the latest research. Phonics, for example, is based on the science of reading, and a lot of how the brain acquires language has been discovered lately. After the invention of fMRI or MRI scans, brain scans, they've been able to understand, okay, how do people really pick up brains and then pick up language. And then there's also a lot of research that's ongoing, and once these research initiatives get done, it takes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and when these research findings become evident, schools should be able to take them and find ways to contextualize it. And so you also have to understand that parents also have to understand that there will be a certain amount of experiments, And being experimental does not mean that the school doesn't know what it's doing. Being experimental also in a way means that the school is trying to do everything possible to be able to do things faster, better, leaner, in that fashion.
I think the idea of the strategy of a systematic investment plan (SIP) applies to school rather than going online and buying something on Amazon or Flipkart. Parents nowadays think that it's like a e-commerce transaction. You just go in, search something, click and pay, and then you get delivered what the product you ordered, and then you can return it if you don't like it. I think the strategy that we have to train our parents of this country is that it's an SIP. It's an investment, not a purchase or a transaction. So that there needs to be a long-term strategy, and it has to be a systematic investment plan. And there has to be partners to fulfill that journey. So I think this is something we are missing in that parenting curriculum. And most of the schools, I think 85-90% of the schools miss out on this activity on a regular basis, because end of the day they wait for the PTA meetings, the PTMs, and then they just answer the questions and then that's it. I think you have a very wonderful model of involving students in the PTMs, and the ownership of the PTM is mostly given to the students to prepare themselves, present their portfolio, engage the parent, and then have that conversation, and teachers become more of a silent spectator, and then they mentor the whole show. Just elaborate on your experience and your vision on that, and how it's going to impact the parenting curriculum that we discuss right now, the gaps that we have.
It's a really nice question. About 10 years ago, we developed a project in the school called the Student-Led Parents Meeting. And the idea was we look at every minute or every experience or all the time that a child is spending in school to be teaching moments, not just when the bell rings, And what I mean is we need to look at the journey that a child has inside a school. So there's teaching, there's break time, there's coming to school, going to school, there's annual days, sports days, there are all these different events, and there are report days, and there are exams, and the instructional days and non-instructional days. And I think, how do we maximize all these experiences and make them stronger teaching moments? If you really look at it, if you look at any school timetable, there's no period for personal leadership, personal mastery. There is no period that talks about having difficult conversations. There is no period that talks about navigating social difficulties, right? So yet we know that these are skills that children have. We assume that children will automatically pick up these things, but they don't, right? It's better if you're just being very explicit. So we realize that a report day where the report is given to a child is one of the most high impact days. Rather, it's a very high stake days.
Yes.
The minute they come to the class, typically across India, there'll be 5 children's name written on the board, rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it, right? And even kids who don't pay fees, many of them may not be allowed to come into typical schools on that day. And it's also because that day is anchored in the mind of parents as well as very important days. Like they may not miss going to school on their open day, right? That shows that the whole system has given a lot of power to that day, right? So we said, how can we take that day?
It's like Odunal Mudalvan.
Okay.
Now there's a movie where one guy is given in charge of the chief ministership
For one day?
For one day.
Oh, yeah. So that's it, right? And now suddenly, when everyone has taken so much interest in the child becomes the victim, unless you're the first 5. If you're rank 2, I think the parent may say, why aren't you rank 1?
99.99%, and then where is that 0.1%?
Yeah, exactly right. So my point being, we said, okay, how can we take a student who might end up becoming the weakest part of this system, and how can we make this child the strongest part of the system? How can we ensure that this child is going to learn and do better anyway, but how can he take away life skills from this situation? So we developed a process that gets children, right from the time the way the question paper is designed, the way the answer sheet is designed, there is a lot of agency in children. Children start, studying the question paper, studying the answer. They start. The teachers only give marks for the whole paper, but then children start doing the data entry. Children start doing the analysis. Children start looking at the marks per question, and then they start analyzing. Then they start talking to their friends and say, hey, who in this class actually got that answer that I did not get? So then they start discovering other people who got their answer right, and merely through discussion they go like, oh yeah, I figured it out. And then there is the big day, which is the student-led parents day. We also call it base camp, and parents come to school, and parents are given a place to sit, like father, mother sit, and across the table, parents are waiting and expecting to see the teacher, but across the table comes their own child with heaps of data. So almost 12, 13 pages of data analysis that this child has done about his own paper. And where he is in terms of the benchmark. Comparing himself to where he should be or where he could be. And then they sit down and they lead a 45-minute meeting with the parent on their own, with their own parent. Now, people may say, hey, children and parents are at home, why can't they do that? But they don't do that, right? They don't do that. They don't have the authority, they don't have the structure, they don't have the reason to do this. And so we've noticed that children have been able to very beautifully navigate difficult situations, because there are times when parents may be impatient and they see a particular mark and they get really scared, and their reactions to that could be terrible, and
they may be finger pointing to someone else.
They'll be finger pointing.
But it's really good when this feedback goes directly to the student, and then he thinks about it, and he actually quantifies the gap, and then he is presenting the solution or the action plan to fill that gap.
And it's very simple, and it doesn't
there
cost,
to mentor.
It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost any money to do this. Any school can just do it. It's just a human process. It's just giving children a little more authority. It's giving parents, an opportunity to sit down and talk. No one stops me from doing 10 push-ups here right now. It's just that I don't do it.
100%.